Daily news and analysis. We keep you informed and inspired.
This is World Today.
China and the European Union have launched trade and investment consultation mechanism. What's the key focus? We will also explore how China's institutional system guides the country's growth. And gas prices are hitting American people's finances and travel plans. Hello and welcome to World Today. I'm Do Hongyu in Beijing. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching World Today. Our first story. China and the European Union have confirmed the establishment of China-EU Trade and Investment Consultation Mechanism. Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao and European Commissioner for Trade Maros Sefcovic held the first meeting of the framework in Brussels. The two sides identified four initial work streams, which include trade and investment balancing, export controls, intellectual property rights, and WTO reform. They also agreed to establish a joint mechanism to exchange data, monitor trade flows, and support technical work to improve transparency, enhance mutual trust, and manage trade frictions. For more, we're joined by Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Zhou. First of all, why is it necessary to establish this trade and investment consultation mechanism? And what challenges are China and the EU trying to solve through this platform?
I would say that China and the EU, both countries and the regions, are really important partners in the global trade networks. So for us, we have so many different opinions and different kind of areas. And we also have a lot of common consensus on certain kind of areas which need to be strengthened. So in this regard, I would say that such a complicated situation is happening. We are seeing the reconstruction of the global supply chains, and a lot of protectionisms and barriers are happening. And the world is trying to rebalance as in the new period. So both China and the EU, we need to try to understand more about the other side and also trying to solve the problems. I believe that based on this mechanism, both sides are able to discuss the related issues and also trying to give some of these possible solutions on some of the challenges. So these are really good platforms for both sides to discuss about what they are really concerning.
The mechanism will focus on four areas. The first one is balancing trade and investment. Why is this a priority?
In my understanding, that concerns coming from EU maybe mostly, and I think that EU is facing a lot of challenges, and the international trade imbalance is one of them. So some of these people in the European Union, they believe that their imbalance have a lot of relations with trade with China. So I think that why they are putting this as one of the priorities to discuss with China. So I don't think that we agree that the imbalance of EU is a result of China and the relation with China. But I think that we are very open. So we are going to discuss the related issues with them, with EU, and we are trying to address the challenges, and also we are going to help EU to find some of these supporting pillars for its development. I can find that from EU side, they have been in that status for quite some while, like from the energy shocks, from some of the pressures coming from United States about the higher tariffs and more requirement about its openness of its market. So China is also giving some of the alternative choices for EU buyers. So in this regard, I think that we are able to deal with the problems in a better way by the discussion, by the better communicating about the related issues. And I believe that we are going to address the challenges, and also we are going to discuss this issue based on the market rule.
And then what concrete steps could both sides take to make their economic relationship more balanced while maintaining mutually beneficial cooperation?
In my understanding, that the EU is concerning about their deficits to China I think that is one of our concerns also for this year. So if you're looking at the government report for this year, we're putting the balanced trade as one of our targets for the international trade. So the trade with EU is maybe helpful for us to deal with these problems and also to meet the target. And if we're trying to reduce the imbalance between these two parts, I think that maybe we can import more things from EU. And actually, I do believe that many of the EU states, they really have a lot of export desire to China, including the agricultural products and some of these technological products. And I think that they are really want to open China's market. So to meet this demand, I think that there may be several choices. The first one is that we need to give Chinese people more information about what they are really able to provide to us. And second, we need to establish or strengthening the logistics between our two parts, trying to improve the efficiency in a better way and more stable and safe routes to import from EU. And on the other hand, I need to say that we are able to do more things based on the operation of the multinational companies, like some of these Chinese companies are investing in EU. They are, making some investment there to produce some of these parts, like the automobiles, auto parts. They can export to China in this regard. So the interactions between these two parts are really able to address some of the challenges. And I think that is also possible for us to do more intercooperation on the areas of the trading services and the digital trade.
And another focus is export controls. What are the main concerns on both sides? And can this new dialogue mechanism help build trust and prevent more trade frictions?
I hope so that, if both sides can really listen to the other side. I don't think that is just a same issues for both sides. Maybe EU is worrying China's abilities and export control on some of the rare earth and other materials, raw materials. But I don't think that is a problem because we are able to provide the EU buyers with more certain supply in this regard. But what we are worrying about from EU side is that EU is putting more and more items or even technologies or digital trade or other issues in the areas of control. Maybe it's not just in the area of export control, but they are really trying to limit some of this cooperation based on these practices. Like what we can find from the Holland, that ASML, when they are forbidding to export, those machineries for the semiconductors to China, I think that is really dangerous for them to destroy the supply chains among our two sides. So the export control maybe are in a very wide range, and we need to also to reduce the uncertainties from EU side.
Now, China and the European Union also agreed to strengthen communication on WTO reform. Why is reform of the WTO becoming increasingly urgent? And what can the two sides do in improving global trade governance?
I believe that these areas are really promising for both sides to do more cooperation because both sides are supporting WTO as a globalization is one of our priorities, and we want to fulfill our commitments to support the WTO. So the reform is necessary because that we are seeing some of these maybe not so proper rules or not enough market access by the WTO members. So when we're trying to improve a better trade and also investment, we need to have a better mechanism. So the reform is very necessary for us to continue to support the global trade and investment. But another issue is also very important. That is some of the protectionisms coming from certain members of WTO, which is are really a big threat for even the existence of these multilateral systems. So for China and the EU, we have a very strong trade and also a lot of influence in the WTO system. So we need to also provide some alternative ways. Even the United States do not want to agree on what they have promises that in the past. We still have to support the rest of the world, some of the developing countries and some of these least developed economies to benefit from the globalization. I think that is a very very important for us to meet our desire or goals as development.
Now, what tangible outcomes should businesses and investors watch for from this consultation mechanism? And which sectors are most likely to benefit if the dialogue proves successful?
I don't think that we can just expect that these mechanisms can be very effective as a first round of negotiations, but we are expecting that we have a regular patterns or agendas for these mechanisms, no matter in China or EU. We need to make some plans for us to deal with, and we may need to list some of the priorities for the discussions. Well, the market are so wide as we just mentioned, the relation between these two economies are covering so many areas. So what are our priorities? The market need to know that, and maybe we can just give better expectations in those areas for the cooperation. Well, I think that these potentials of this mechanism is not just for us to deal with our challenges, but also trying to expand the range of the cooperation and trying to strengthen the mutual understanding based on the market side. So these are very promising for us to have a better or more reliable supply chains based on more communications. And I hope that we can expect better arrangement, like for the tariffs, for some of the market access, or not abuse some of these practices like the anti-subsidies or something to do with counter dumping. Those practices, we should try to be very careful also on some of the new measurements, even in the name of the greenness, like the CBAM as one of the possible measurement by the EU side. We need to address these challenges and deal with some of these uncertainties in a better way.
And finally, Dr. Zhou, in an uncertain global economic environment, how important is it for China and the EU to strengthen institutional dialogue? And what impact could it have on global trade, investment, and supply chain stability?
It's very important because from China's side, EU is our very important partners for the trade and also have a lot of common understanding for the multilateral systems. So we need to try to discuss with them and establish more transparent and foreseeable cooperation and relations. And for EU, it is even more important because EU is facing some challenges, pressures coming from the cross-Atlantic countries, and they are having many problems like the energy, some of the geopolitical tensions. So the input from China, the relations with China are crucial for them to sustain their development mode and also trying to explore a better space. So we hope that we can do more to covering, many areas.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Coming up, how China's institutional system guides the country's growth. This is World Today. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Yan Liang, Kramer Chair Professor of Economics at Willamette University. In a rapidly changing world, staying informed has never been more important. World Today delivers sharp analysis, global perspectives, and the stories behind the headlines. It is your trusted source to understand what's shaping our world. World Today, bringing the world closer.
Welcome back. As the Communist Party of China celebrates the 105th anniversary of its founding this Wednesday, we continue our special series exploring the key factors behind its role in shaping China's development. The CPC has seen steady membership growth. By the end of 2025, it had over 101 million members, a net increase of over 1 million compared with the end of 2024. Female membership numbered nearly 32 million, about one-third of the total. Ethnic minority members made up 7.8%. CPC members come from all walks of life, including workers, farmers, professionals, and students. For more, we're joined by Yao Shujie, Chiang Kong Professor of Economics at Chongqing University. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Yao.
Hi, you're welcome.
First of all, what do you think attracts so many people to join the party today?
Yeah, China have a huge population, 1.4 million people. And also China have gone through a very long period of peaceful development and economic prosperities. As the people's life improved, lots of people they would started to realize the importance of the CPC, the Communist Party of China. And because the Chinese party leadership, China gets stronger and stronger. The economy getting ever more important and powerful at the global level. So it attracts a lot of appreciation from the ordinary people. The membership actually, trickle down from the very top tier of city to the countryside, from the Han majority nationality to the other over 50, minor minorities, and also from male to female. You can see that it's highly represented by the female membership and also represented by the minor minority people. So it means that the body of membership is getting bigger because people have more and more support and recognition of the role of the CPC in the development of the economy and the society.
Now there's roughly one CPC member for every 14 people in China, and they cover all walks of life. So what significance does this huge membership scale carry for national governance, and how does this extensive coverage of party members help bridge the gap between public demands and top decision making?
Yes, you have a ratio which is highly interesting. I mean, 1/14 Chinese. The 14 Chinese actually including the elderly and also the children. If we exclude the people who are not eligible to become a party member, for the people who are age 18 or below, it would be roughly about 1 to 10 or 1 to 9 of the adults who are the party member. And why it is very important because the party have a policy which implemented throughout the countries, in which vast memberships, I think the party policy could be trickled down from the top, from Beijing to the lower level, and the policy will become immediately transparent and fully understand by the ordinary citizens in China, because the party members are usually more informed of government policy and also the motivation. The large membership actually allow the central policy to be trickled down from Beijing to the grassroots level, so that people can immediately understand what the party wishes to do and what it can achieve to benefit the ordinary people in the country.
Now, China follows the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics, with CPC leadership at its core. So why does China see the party's leadership as essential to this development model?
Yeah, President Xi Jinping recently have just said party leadership is the basic characteristic of the Chinese style socialism. Why is that? For me, there are three important explanations for this party leadership as the core characteristic of the socialism in China. First of all, I mean, China went through a very long, period of, foreign invasion and also turmoil in the domestic, in the countries, from the first Opium War to the revolution in 2011. And over almost a century long of history, lots of people are trying to come up with a solution to resolve the problem and also unify the country. But party after party, idea after idea, there was no successful achievement. Only until 1921, the Communist Party was established, initially with a small number of members, but the idea of borrowing from the Soviet Union and also rooted with the Marxism, theory of socialism and communism, it actually have a fully popular experience and support from the grassroots level. The vast majority of peasantry at the time, they realized that only the Chinese Communist Party who would be able to unite the people and provide common prosperity for all. And this is why the CPC got very popular and was able to lead the revolution from 1921 to 1949, when the People's Republic was established, led by the Communist Party. And after that, the second stage, the socialist revolution and constructions from 1949 to 1978, it laid a very good foundation of socialist system, which enabled the open up policy from 1978 for China to get the economy reform and have a long, almost half a century unbroken economic growth and prosperity, economic development, and the living standard of improving all the time for all the Chinese people. So the practices or the real outcome of the Chinese, CPC leadership spoke itself. That only the party leadership who can lead the Chinese people from standing up, from becoming, rich, and nowadays we are aiming for becoming strong. And this is the new era led by President Xi Jinping, for China to engage a new episode of modernization of the socialist system. And China, from the top to the lower level, from different regions, from different segments of the society, people have full confidence that with the leadership, I think China could become a modernized and socialist country by the middle of this century. And China is moving that direction fairly confidently with full support and power from the grassroots.
And from the perspective of global governance, what valuable experience can China's unique governance system bring to the world?
Firstly, party leadership and also unification of interest for all the people, for the whole nation, for the whole country, could actually generate economic miracles. Western society, typical by the already developed and capitalist system, they have a lot of advantage, but they have some significant disadvantage in terms of letting behind some people who could not catch up with the economic development, especially the eradication of absolute poverty already pose important challenges to all nations, including the rich country and the poor countries. The poor people hardly got the benefit of economic development, including the most powerful country nowadays, the United States. China is exception. China's per capita GDP, when it reached just over 10,000 US dollars, the government have the campaign to eradicate up to absolute poverty throughout the country. So you can see that there's no poverty in China nowadays with the so-called 2 guarantee for food, guarantee for clothing, and 3 necessity for education, for housing, and also for health care. Now, this concept, achievement is unique, only supported by a strong party leadership.
Okay, thank you very much. That was Yao Shujie, Cheung Kong Professor of Economics at Chongqing University. You're listening to World Today. We'll be back after a short break.
Hello, my name is Alessandro Golombiewski Teixeira. I'm a professor of public policy and management at Tsinghua University in Beijing. I am a great listener of The World Today. In my opinion, The World Today is one of the best China radio programs. In The World Today, we can get the best news and analysis in what is happening now in the world. So please come to join us.
You're listening to World Today with me, Do Hongyu, in Beijing. China's new outbound investment regulation takes effect on July the 1st, marking a significant update to the country's overseas investment framework. The new rules aim to promote high-quality outbound investment, protect investor rights and interests, and safeguard national sovereignty, security, and development interests. The 34-article regulation emphasizes high-standard opening up, Belt and Road cooperation, stronger risk controls, and better services for Chinese companies investing abroad. For more on this, my colleague Zhao Yang spoke with Yan Liang, professor of economics at Willamette University.
So, Yan, China says the new regulation aims to promote high-level opening up while safeguarding national security. How should we understand this balance between openness and security?
Well, I think to understand this, we need to understand the new elements or the principles introduced by these regulations. First is, I think, the idea of promoting openness and the high-quality expansion. It's not exclusive to also enhancing security safeguards. And in this new regulation, it emphasizes the rule of law uniformity, allow investors to have one single legal architecture to follow the rules. It actually reduces the kind of confusion and uncertainty. And it also allows China's rules to be more aligned with the global rules that, again, provide some certainties for investors. It enhanced actually investors' autonomy, allow them to make clear decisions to navigate global market based on the standard market principles. And it also offers state-backed safeguards, and so that protect investors abroad. So that's important to know that this regulation is not a sort of constraint, but it also provides safeguards and regulatory certainty for investors. And second, I think it's important to understand that this new law emphasizes the compliance is important. Investors is in a way precautioned. It's served as a preventative measure to compel investors to comply with the laws. Otherwise, these kinds of consequences could be severe. So I think in a way, this law provides a framework to clear up the regulatory certainty, streamline the regulations to protect security, and at the same time encourage autonomous decision-making by investors, understanding the laws, the regulations, and the expectations. So I think this is a way to balance the two, to both have the high-level opening and to respect and enforce national security regulations.
And so what are the changes introduced by this new regulations, and why is it important now?
Well, I think the changes here is we're seeing that there are five important aspects. The first is that expands the scope of these regulations. So any acquisition of foreign assets, either directly or indirectly, they're going to need to be compliant with this regulation. And second is clear up, or it puts forth the overall requirements. So what this means is that the national security needs to be implemented throughout the regulations. It also implements the services system for the outbound investors. It also promotes the quality for these overseas investments to align with international rules, to promote the One Belt, One Road or Belt Road initiatives, and to promote supply chain international cooperation. So there is a overall requirements, not just a specific area requirements for the outbound investments. And third is that it really improved the comprehensive services system. And in other words, it promotes governments at the local level to improve their public services and their capabilities to support outbound investors, to provide, commercial fairs, to provide more information and protection, and many other aspects of services. And the fourth improvement here is a implementation of management. So this management is not just at the beginning of the outbound investment, but it's throughout the entire process of the investments. So there's different levels of regulators that will have this whole process regulations and monitor to improve risk prevention. And finally, I think it really emphasized the protection of outbound investments. And I think this is very important because, the global environment has been more and more volatile and protectionist. So I think how to protect Chinese investors' overseas interests and legitimate rights is very important. So I think these regulations have talked about using negotiations, arbitrations, and legal processes to settle, disputes and so on. So I think these 5 aspects are really important as China's outbound investments is rising to the new level and with a lot more technological intensive outbound investments. So you would need this kind of clarity and service provisions as well as protections for the outbound investors.
And the regulation established a protection framework for Chinese outbound investors. For example, it requires relevant government department and financial institutions to strengthen the risk warning system and provide services to overseas investment. So how important are these measures now?
Well, I think this is important. As I just mentioned, there has been rising protectionism in the global environment. So how to help Chinese outbound investors to both navigate this complex international environment, but also to provide necessary protection, not only for these outbound investors' business interest, but also for China's national security interest. As we know, China is leading more and more in technologies, especially in AI, and in biotech and in many others. So I think with the Chinese companies going abroad, they need certain clarities. What are the legal activities, what to protect, and how to solve any disputes while they're abroad. So I think this regulation really emphasizes to provide the kinds of protections that the foreign investors need to protect their legitimate business interests, but also importantly, to protect national interests, especially when it comes to cutting edge technologies or homegrown technologies. So to prevent any either intentional or unintentional, I think, malpractices when it comes to, leaking the Chinese cutting edge technologies or sell these technologies that would threaten, I think, China's own technological, autonomy and interest.
And China has reaffirmed its commitment to aligning its trade and investment rules with global norms and to supporting for an open global economy. So how are these new rules aligned with the international economic and trade rules? And what role will China play in the future global investment system?
Well, I think that the new rules that now are more aligned with international rules is really to secure foreign market assets for the companies, to defend against the unilateral protectionism, and also to legitimize China's economic practices on the global stage. So this is not only to, serve the interest of global markets, right? Because these global markets welcome China's investments, but it's also to secure China's interest. So when you have a rule that is more aligned with the global rule, it helps to bypass, these market barriers when it comes to global abroad, because they cannot use, the discrepancies to rules as a way to deny China's investments. So this helped to guarantee or at least improve the market access for Chinese capital. So that is one way to protect China's interest. And second, I think it helps to form a legitimate defense against protectionism. So this new rule, of course, it shows that China is defender of multilateralism. It is complying with the WTO rules. So that helps China to justify, for example, countermeasures. So if there's any foreign entities that would take any protectionary unilateral measures against China's investments, then China's countermeasures are legitimized using the global multilateral rules. And finally, I think it's important to understand that this will help to maximize China's own integration into the global system, because it helped to attract co-investors, it helped to standardize cross-border contracts, and it also helped to reciprocate the legal authorities when the Chinese companies are abroad. So in a way, I think this, to align with the global rules, not only help China to gain market access, to get more, co-investors and to have more friendly environment, but also help to safeguard China's interest and legitimize any countermeasures should any disputes arise.
That was Yan Liang, professor of economics at Willamette University. Coming up, gas prices are hitting American people's finances and travel plans. This is World Today. We'll be back.
Welcome. I am Chu Zhang, Deputy Director at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University. On the World Today program, we will dive beyond the headlines to uncover the stories, trends, and impacts that connect states across the globe. Join me on World Today.
Welcome back. A new Gallup poll shows that rising fuel prices are putting financial pressure on households across the United States. The finding comes as the conflict involving Iran, the United States, and Israel has pushed up oil prices and renewed concerns about the stability of global energy supplies. The survey conducted in the first half of June found that 2/3 of Americans say higher gasoline prices have caused financial hardship for their families. Nearly 1 in 5 of those affected described the burden as severe. The impact is also changing consumer behavior. Over half of respondents say they're driving less to save money, while 46% have changed their summer vacation plans because of higher fuel costs. For more, we're joined by Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Zhang.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, 67% of American people are feeling the financial pressure from rising energy prices. How closely are tensions in the Middle East linked to what American consumers are paying at the pump?
First of all, I think we should note that the Strait of Hormuz is a very important transportation hub through which over 20% of global oil and significant LNG flows. So the ongoing U.S.-Israeli war with Iran, including disruptions and threats to the Strait of Hormuz, has actually driven sharp spikes in global benchmark price. And also at the same time, we see it's not just a war between U.S., Israel, and Iran, but also Iran has attacked its neighbors, and there are confrontations between the Gulf countries and Iran. And all of them are important oil producers in the world. So today we see Brent often becomes above $100 per barrel at its peak, with sustained elevation during this period. So I think this directly feeds into the United States gasoline prices as the oil market is globally integrated. So even with a ceasefire or an MOU at the moment, the situation is still highly unpredictable, and full normalization of flows and inventories take time. So that will keep prices elevated in the short term.
But the United States has become one of the world's largest oil producers. Why are American consumers still so vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices?
Well, this is a very important point. Actually, I would say as for a large power like the United States, its interests are multi-layered. So on the one hand, the United States is the world's largest oil producer and a net exporter. So it means that it can somehow, especially some sectors of the United States can actually benefit from this high oil price. But at the same time, it remains also exposed because crude and product prices are set on the global market. So we see a global supply shock raises the opportunity cost and benchmark levels everywhere, including the United States. So currently, the United States economy is also relatively oil intensive, and that has amplified the domestic impact on, let's say, transport, industry, and consumer costs. And in addition, rising oil prices themselves can lead to price increases and inflation. And the United States actually, even before this conflict, has already suffered from high inflation problem. And last but not least, oil is also a raw material for many industrial products. So when global oil prices rise, then the prices of many manufactured products will increase accordingly. Also, oil price volatility can lead to instability in financial markets.
Now there seems to be conflicting messaging over a possible new round of U.S.-Iran talks. U.S. President Donald Trump says officials from both sides will meet on Tuesday in the Qatari capital, but Iran's foreign ministry denied any meetings with the U.S. in the coming days. How do you interpret these mixed signals?
Above all, I would say it's not the first time that we see different signals sent by the two sides. They have always kept this kind of model, and I think the reason is that right now there is not just a confrontation, militarily speaking, but also there is the discursive competition between the two sides. And right now, both sides want to maintain their tough image to their domestic audience. So they're positioning the ongoing negotiations differently. Iran is unwilling to acknowledge direct negotiations with the United States. Instead, it tries to emphasize that it's trying to deal with technical matters. On the other hand, the United States wants to amplify its diplomatic victory. But at the same time, I think it is noteworthy that Iran is trying to seize the initiative in the negotiations. So it is trying to shift the focus from the nuclear issue to the Lebanese issue and the lifting of U.S. sanctions against Iran. So in general, as we see, the two sides, they have their own focus, and that is why they send exactly and completely different signals.
And then do you expect tensions to ease through diplomacy, or is there still a significant risk of renewed confrontation and further disruption to global energy markets?
Well, I think for both sides, they know exactly that the escalation of the conflict is in the benefits of both sides. And diplomacy offers the best path to easing tensions. Also, the mediators such as Qatar, such as Pakistan, they are trying to bridge the two sides gap. And now recent MOU and talk announcements suggest some momentum. However, significant risks remain due to hardliners on both sides. Also, for instance, there are still, it's not just a matter between US and Iran, but also there is the problem with Israel and Lebanon, for instance. So there are many players at this stage, and it becomes extremely complex. I think it's very hard for the two sides to agree on the issues of verification disputes and potential spoilers. So right now, I think renewed confrontation is also possible. So far we have a fragile ceasefire, but sustained diplomacy is needed to reduce risks materially.
Okay, thank you very much. That was Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University. Coming up, South Korea announces a mega AI and chip investment drive. This is World Today. Stay tuned.
Hello, I am Dr. Digby James Wren, a political analyst and international relations scholar specializing in China area studies. World Today offers unmatched in-depth perspectives on China's politics, economics, business, technology and society. World Today's team of reporters and contributors provides valuable information from all of the world's major economies. I hope you can join me on World Today for the very best insights and news from China, on China, and help to build a better understanding of China's role in the world today.
You're listening to World Today with me, Do Hongyu, in Beijing. South Korea is launching a major investment plan in semiconductors and artificial intelligence amid soaring global demand for AI infrastructure. President Lee Jae-myung announced the plan alongside the country's two largest chip makers, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. The two companies will invest about 800 trillion won, or over $500 billion to build chip production hubs in the country's southwest. For more, my colleague Lian Qingxuan spoke with Andy Mok, professor at Beijing Foreign Studies University.
So, Professor, why is South Korea launching such a massive AI and semiconductor investment drive at this particular moment? So what domestic and global factors are driving the urgency?
Well, I think that's an important question, and I think there's a two-part answer. So first of all, any country, South Korea, any country we can think of, wants to not get left behind in this new world of artificial intelligence. So I think, this is very understandable. But there's another aspect to this that when we look at what they're doing is that this actually is, I think, South Korea relying on, or perhaps overly relying on, American AI infrastructure. And what do I mean by this? So first of all, South Korea has what's called the so-called tier one access to American AI technology. So that means, they're able to buy the most advanced NVIDIA chips, et cetera. And they also rely, I think, almost exclusively on NVIDIA's open source model. And here, I think the symbolic aspect of this is perhaps more important than the actual on the ground impact, in that I think what they're signaling is that a not entirely rational choice to exclude solutions that are cheaper and more effective. And in particular, here I'm referring to, say, Chinese open weight models that they actually could host on their own hardware. And, they're clearly not doing that. And again, this is not an entirely rational decision. And I think it shows that this quest for not being left behind in the new age of artificial intelligence, in some instances, also can be hampered by political, or we could call it geopolitical considerations.
South Korea wants to build an AI ecosystem. How do semiconductors, physical AI, and AI data centers work together to support that vision?
So we can think of this as a value chain where the semiconductors go into the data centers that produce the tokens that allow humans to benefit from artificial intelligence. And of course, the third pillar they're adding is physical AI robots. So not only AI that can produce text, produce pictures, produce sounds, but actually can move and act in and on the physical world. So I think this is a very ambitious initiative. And I think it makes sense that they're focusing on chips, data centers, and physical AI. But one thing we have to be very clear on is upstream of that is power, meaning electricity generation. And without sufficient competitively priced electricity, you could have the best chips in the world, you could have the most data centers, but you're not going to get very far.
The government is expanding investment beyond chip manufacturing into chip design, packaging, testing, and equipment. So how important is it to strengthen the entire semiconductor supply chain?
Well, there's two reasons for doing this. The first is a commercial one. So you can get efficiency gains and cost reduction benefits by vertically integrating, by clustering all of these necessary pieces of delivering a functioning chip to a data center or to a server that goes in a data center. So there's a very good commercial reason for this. But there's also a sovereignty reason for this, in that I think any country that has the ability to build AI capacity within its own borders is going to want to do so in a way where, again, it can exercise sovereignty over its own AI infrastructure. And I think this is the second reason for that.
Existing chip hubs around Seoul are facing limits in land, power, and water. To what extent can new semiconductor clusters in southwest of the country solve these problems?
Well, this is, I think, again, where the challenges emerge. So you touched on power. So the ability to generate enough electricity at a competitive price is absolutely crucial. And here, while South Korea may establish sovereignty over chips and data centers, where they do not have sovereignty is on the energy side. One reason is because they're so reliant on imported natural gas. And unlike, say, China, they don't have a vast land area to generate their own sustainable energy, whether that's wind, solar, et cetera. So this is going to be one very, very important constraint, as I mentioned. The second one in building more data centers is just like in the United States, there's a growing backlash of not in my backyard, meaning many Americans do not want to live next to a data center. And this can be an enormous political obstacle. And we are seeing, of course, some of this in South Korea. So I think this is something else. The political repercussions are another potential limitation here, besides the power.
After Samsung and SK Hynix announced their investment plans, the Kospi briefly rebounded before ending the day lower. So what does that market reaction tell us, and what concerns do you think the market is pricing in?
Well, the Kospi, actually any stock market is driven by a number of factors. So I'm not sure we could say, that it was expressly caused by this announcement. So we have to see, again, I think to the degree that investors, the market, sees greater growth opportunities or expansion of margins because of these policies, that certainly will impact the share price of companies like Samsung, SK Hynix, et cetera. But again, I think it's important to remember here that stock markets are driven by a number of factors. And it's very rare that we can point to only a single factor to say, hey, this is what affects the price.
South Korea expects global demand for memory chips to grow rapidly over the next 5 years. Do you think this optimism is well-founded?
Gosh, well, that's, I guess, the multi-trillion-dollar question, right? Is this enormous investment, not just in memory chips, but in data centers, all the infrastructure of AI, is it actually building usable capacity for the future that some optimists believe could double or triple global GDP? Or is it an example of a highway to nowhere, right? So building all of this infrastructure that no one will ever use, or at least use completely. So I think, memory, of course, is a big part of this, especially with HBM, high bandwidth memory, that is crucial for running these AI models. So again, we have to see.
Lastly, as countries around the world are investing heavily in AI and chips, what will determine who leads the next generation of the semiconductor industry?
Well, I think ultimately what matters is impact. And once there's widespread usage adoption, I think, of course, that will create demand for semiconductor chips. But then also it's a complex dynamic in that we can have greater demand, greater usage of AI tokens, while chip demand remains stable, or perhaps could, at least theoretically, decline because the models that run on the chips have become so much more efficient. But I would say, generally speaking, we'll see growing demand for different kinds of chips. And it's not just NVIDIA high-end chips, but now we have Huawei, we have other Chinese companies entering the market as well. And we should expect, as usage grows, that overall chip sales will also increase as well.
That was Andy Mok, professor at Beijing Foreign Studies University, talking with my colleague Lianqing Xuan. That's all the time for this edition of World Today. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching for World Today. I'm Do Hongyu in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.